Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive. Today we're going to be looking at Pacific Biosciences of California.
PACB.
PACB, that's right.
Yeah.
To see if their stock is worth a buy.
I think this is going to be really interesting.
Yeah, and we've got a ton of stuff to go through.
We do. We've got research reports, market analyses, and even some interesting stuff from the FDA.
Ooh,
So,
interesting.
yeah,
So PACB is actually a pretty big player in the DNA sequencing market,
they are.
which is projected to grow to like $75 billion by 2033.
Huge market.
Huge.
Yeah.
So,
The big question is...
yeah, are they in a good position or are they not? That's what we're going to find out today.
Yeah, and I think what's really fascinating about this one is PACB is really on the cutting edge of DNA sequencing technology.
Mm-hmm.
And this is tech that, like we talked about before, has applications in almost every area of our lives.
Okay, so let's back up for a second for anyone who's not super familiar with this company.
Sure.
What does PACB actually do?
So they design, develop, and manufacture these really advanced DNA sequencing solutions. And their main focus is something called long-read sequencing.
Long-read sequencing, okay.
Yeah, so think of it like this. You're trying to read a really long sentence, but you can only see a couple of letters at a time.
Okay.
It's hard to understand what that sentence means, right? That's kind of the limitation of older DNA sequencing technology, what they call short-read sequencing.
Short read versus long read.
Exactly. And what PACB is doing is they've developed this technology where scientists can read much longer stretches of DNA at once. So it gives them a much clearer and more comprehensive picture of the genetic code.
So longer reads, clearer picture.
Exactly.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah.
So it sounds like this is some pretty amazing technology, but it's not all just happening in a lab somewhere.
Oh, definitely not.
They're actually using this to try and make a real difference in the world.
Right. And one of the coolest examples of that is this partnership they have with Berry Genomics over in China. So they're providing Berry Genomics with their Vega sequencing systems.
Wow.
And these are being used for prenatal and newborn screening programs.
Wow.
So that's huge, right? We're talking about potentially improving the health of babies before they're even born.
That's incredible.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable stuff.
So it sounds like they're not just about the instruments in the labs.
Right.
It sounds like there's a whole ecosystem around this technology.
There is. They have multiple revenue streams. They're not just selling the sequencers themselves. They're selling consumables, too. So like SMRT cells, those are used to prepare the DNA samples.
Right.
And they're also selling software that helps researchers analyze all that genetic data. It's a pretty comprehensive approach.
Okay, so who are their customers then? Is it like research labs and hospitals?
It's actually a really diverse customer base.
Well,
You've got your research institutions, your universities, they're all pushing the boundaries of science.
sure.
You've got pharmaceutical companies. They're using this to develop new drugs. And of course, we have the clinical diagnostics market that we just talked about.
Right.
But it goes even further than that. Agriculture, forensics, really all sorts of different fields are using this technology.
So it's like they're providing the tools for this whole new wave of genetic exploration.
Exactly like the picks and shovels in a gold rush.
Yeah, exactly. And
Yeah.
speaking of gold rush, this market is expected to absolutely explode.
Yeah, the numbers are crazy.
Yeah.
We're talking a compound annual growth rate of over 17% between now and 2033.
Wow.
And it's expected to reach a value of almost $75 billion by then.
75 billion. What is driving that kind of growth?
So part of it is definitely that the technology is just getting better,
Mm-hmm.
right? Next generation sequencing, long read sequencing, all of that is making it faster, cheaper, more accurate. But it's also about how we're understanding more and more about just how powerful genetic information is.
Right.
Think about it.
Mhm.
Personalized medicine, disease prevention, improving crop yields. There's just so many potential applications.
But the more we learn about DNA, the more we can do with it.
Precise. But remember, growth potential doesn't equal automatic success.
Right. Of course not.
There are some real challenges in this industry, too.
Okay, so what are some of those challenges that PACB is going to have to face?
Well, one of the big ones is just the sheer complexity of analyzing all that genetic data.
Okay.
You need incredibly sophisticated tools to do that, and those tools can be really expensive.
Right.
And then, of course, there's the competition.
Right.
They're going up against some really big established players, companies like Illumina, Thermo Fisher, Scientific, Roche.
So the big dogs.
Yeah, the big dogs. And these companies have a lot of resources, and they have been around for a long time.
Yeah, so some pretty tough competition.
Yeah, definitely.
But what about PACB's leadership team? Are they up to the challenge?
I think they've got a lot of experience on their side.
Okay.
A good example of that is the recent appointment of David Ruggiero as Global Head of Sales and Service.
Okay.
This guy has over 20 years of experience in the field.
Wow.
at companies like Microsoft, Zoom, and even Thermo Fisher Scientific.
Oh, so they poached him from the competition.
Yep, pretty bold move.
That's a statement.
It shows they're serious about growth.
Okay, so experienced team, but what about the financials? Are they in a strong position?
They're definitely working on improving their financial health. One example of that is they've managed to significantly reduce their debt,
Okay,
which is a good sign.
sure.
They're not currently paying dividends, though.
Okay.
They're focusing on reinvesting that money into research and development, which in this market makes a lot of sense.
Sure, you got to stay ahead of the game.
Absolutely.
Okay, so they're investing in the future, but what about your current performance? Are they profitable?
This is where it gets interesting.
Okay.
PACB has seen some really impressive revenue growth in the past. We're talking over 12% annually for the last 3 years.
That's pretty good.
It is, but lately they've been facing some headwinds. They've had some declining instrument revenue, and profitability has been a little bit shaky.
So a bit of a mixed bag.
Yeah, a little bit.
What are some of the key metrics we should be looking at when we're evaluating their financial health?
Well, their market cap is currently sitting at $358.76 million.
Okay.
Another interesting thing is they've been making some strategic acquisitions.
Oh,
Like they recently bought Apton Biosystems, which will help them expand their product portfolio.
smart can't just stay still in a market like this.
Exactly, you got to keep moving.
You got to keep moving.
And some pretty big investors seem to agree with that.
Oh,
We've seen some significant investments from companies like SoftBank Group Corp and Cathie Wood's ARK investment.
Those are the big names.
They are, so that's definitely a good sign.
Okay, so they've got the technology, they've got a growing market, they've got an experienced team, they've got some serious investors backing them.
Mm-hmm.
But the financials are a little bit iffy.
Yeah, a little bit mixed.
What's the overall picture of their financial health then?
I think it's fair to say they have a ton of potential, but they also definitely face some challenges. Their earnings have been declining. Their revenue has been kind of fluctuating, which adds some uncertainty to the mix.
Okay, so things are getting interesting here.
Yeah, they are.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to dive into market sentiment and risk assessment for PACB.
Looking forward to it.
Stick around.
Yeah.
You won't want to miss this. All right, so we've talked about how PPB has this really innovative technology, and they're in a market that's about to explode.
Right. Huge potential.
But their financials are a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, a little bit.
So now let's talk about what the market actually thinks about PPCB.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, investor sentiment, that's what really drives a stock up or down.
Absolutely. So what's the overall feeling about PECB?
Well, I'd say right now it's pretty cautious.
Really? Why is that?
I think it goes back to those financial challenges we were just talking about.
Yeah.
You know, the declining earnings, the fluctuating revenue that makes investors nervous.
It's understandable they want to see steady growth, not a roller coaster.
Exactly, and there's also the competitive landscape to consider.
Right. PCB's got some really big rivals.
They do like Illumina, for example.
Yeah.
That's a giant in the industry. Tons of resources, years of success.
So investors might be a little hesitant to bet on the underdog.
It's kind of a David and Goliath situation, but with DNA sequencers.
I like that analogy.
Yeah.
So what are the analysts saying? Are they optimistic about PCD's future?
It's a real mixed bag, to be honest.
Okay.
Some of them are giving PACB a buy rating. They see a lot of potential in the technology and the market growth. But then others are saying, they're pointing to those financial uncertainties and the fierce competition.
So no clear consensus.
Not really. Everyone's kind of on the fence.
Is there anything else we can look at to get a sense of market sentiment?
Well, there's some interesting data coming from AI-powered analysis.
Oh, really?
Yeah, for example, the Danilfin score for PACB is a hold.
Okay.
And their prediction is only a very slight advantage over the market in the next 3 months. And then you've got things like those SMRT cells that we talked about earlier.
Yeah.
Some reports are showing that utilization rates for those are actually stagnating.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, not a great sign for investors.
There's a great sign. So not exactly the ringing endorsements you'd hope for.
Right, not exactly, but it's not all doom and gloom.
Okay, so there is some good news.
There is some good news. Some analysts are actually quite bullish on PACB.
Oh, yeah?
They see potential for big growth, especially in areas like clinical diagnostics and in the Asia-Pacific market.
Okay.
And remember those big investments from SoftBank and ARK investment?
Yeah, those were huge.
That shows that some pretty major players are confident in PACB's long-term prospects.
So there's hope.
There's definitely hope.
What are these analysts saying about price targets?
The average price target is around $2.22.
Okay.
which would be a pretty significant upside, almost 60% from where the stock is right now.
Oh, that's a big jump.
It is, but the predictions are all over the place.
Really?
Yeah, some analysts have it as low as $1.50, others as high as $3.50.
Wow, that's a huge range.
Yeah, it's a huge range. It just goes to show how much uncertainty there is about PACB's future.
It seems like even the experts are having trouble figuring this one out.
It's a tough one to call.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit and talk about who actually owns PACB.
Okay.
Is it mostly individual investors, or do big institutions have a lot of control?
That's a really important question because ownership structure can tell you a lot about a company.
Right.
In PCB's case, the vast majority of shares, about 85.6%, are held by institutional investors.
So those are like big investment firms, hedge funds, that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So not a lot of everyday people holding on to PACB stock.
Not really, and that high concentration of institutional ownership, it can have some interesting effects.
Like what?
Well, on the one hand, these firms, they have deep pockets. They can provide stability to the stock price. You've got big names like ARK Investment Management and BlackRock involved.
Those are some heavy hitters.
They are, but on the other hand, if those institutions decide to sell all at once, that could really push the price down.
Right.
And insider ownership in PACB is relatively low, less than 1%.
So the people who actually run the company don't have a lot of skin in the game?
Not as much as you might expect, which could make some people wonder about their confidence in the company's future.
That's a good point. Okay, so we've got this cautious market sentiment and this interesting ownership structure. Now, let's talk about risk. What are some of the biggest potential pitfalls for PCB?
Well, I think a good way to break that down is with a SWOT analysis.
SWOT. Okay, so strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Exactly. So let's start with their strengths. We've already talked about their main strength, their long-read sequencing technology.
Right. It's super accurate.
It's really what sets them apart from the competition. They're also very active in research and development, which is crucial in this industry. If you're not innovating, you're falling behind.
You snooze, you lose.
Exactly. Now let's look at their weaknesses.
Okay, where are they vulnerable?
Well, we've already discussed their financial performance. It's been a bit shaky.
Right, the declining revenue and
Yeah.
profitability issues.
Exactly. And then they're also pretty reliant on government funding, which can be unpredictable.
Sure.
And then there's the overall economic climate right now.
Right.
If we go into a recession, that could really hurt PACB's growth prospects.
So a lot of challenges, both internal and external.
Yeah, for sure. But let's not forget about the opportunities.
Okay, where could they see some big wins?
Well, long-read sequencing is being used in more and more applications all the time. As the technology becomes more affordable, we're going to see it in personalized medicine, drug development, agriculture, even things like tracking foodborne illnesses. We'll talk about that a little bit later.
Okay, so lots of exciting possibilities there.
Definitely. And then there's the potential for growth in the Asia-Pacific market.
Right, we talked about that.
That's a huge market with a lot of room for expansion.
Okay, so lots of opportunity, but also plenty of threats. What could really derail PACB's success?
I think the biggest threat is competition.
Of course.
They're going up against these massive companies with tons of resources and established customer bases.
It's going to be a tough battle.
It is. And they also need to keep up with the rapid pace of technological advancement in this field.
Sure, if they fall behind, they become obsolete.
Exactly. And then there's the regulatory landscape, which can change quickly and unexpectedly.
Oh, yeah. New regulations or changes in funding that could have a huge impact.
Absolutely. So PACB is really walking a tightrope here.
It sounds like they have the potential to be a leader, but they're facing a lot of obstacles.
They are. It's a really interesting case study.
It is. We've covered a lot of ground here.
We have.
Let's take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll wrap things up with our final verdict on PACB. Is it a buy, sell, or hold?
The moment of truth.
Stick around. You won't want to miss it. Welcome back to our deep dive on PACB. So we've spent a lot of time talking about their technology, their financials, the competition, and even, those kind of bigger picture threats that are out there.
It's complex.
It is. It really is.
Yeah.
But now it's time for the big question.
The moment of truth.
Is PACB a buy, sell, or hold?
Well, it's been a fascinating deep dive into the world of biotech investing. We've seen the incredible possibilities with PACB, but also the inherent risks that come with this kind of company.
So where do we land? What's the verdict?
Okay, so I wouldn't say there's like a black and white answer here. PACB, it's a bit of a mixed bag when it comes to investment, and as we've seen, there's a lot of uncertainty about where they're headed.
Right, so no easy answers, but can you walk us through some of the key takeaways? What should investors really be thinking about here?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, PACB's biggest strength is their long-read sequencing technology. It's really accurate, provides this level of detail, and they've got their SMRT sequencing platform, which is unique to them.
Yeah.
It's a powerful combination that gives them a real edge in the market.
Okay, so the technology is great, but as we've discussed, you need more than just good tech to be successful.
Oh, for sure. You can't just rest on your laurels. Technology alone isn't enough. They need to use this advantage to really grab a bigger piece of that market share and, importantly, turn those technological wins into financial wins.
Right, they need to prove that they can make money.
Exactly. Show those profits and, their management team does have experience, but can they navigate these challenges, overcome the financial hurdles, and really capitalize on those growth opportunities that are out there? That's going to be the real test.
So they need to walk the walk.
They do, and we can't forget about that market sentiment, which we talked about. It's cautious right now. There are concerns about their financial performance. The competition is intense. They need to address those concerns head on and show investors that they have a clear path towards profitability that's sustainable.
They need to show that they can not only innovate, but they can also, bring home the bacon.
Exactly. Make those profits consistent.
So putting it all together, what's your call on PCB?
Okay, so after weighing everything we've talked about, the pros, the cons, all the different factors, our verdict on PACB is a hold.
A hold?
Yeah, they absolutely have the potential to be a leader in this market. The DNA sequencing market is only going to grow, but right now there's just too much uncertainty about their ability to really overcome all those hurdles and fully capitalize on all the opportunities that are out there. It's a company to watch, definitely, but maybe not one to go all in on right this second.
It sounds like they're at a crossroads. They could be huge or they could, stumble.
They could, and that's why we do these deep dives, right? We dig into the complexities, the good, the bad, the uncertainty, so that you, our listeners, can make informed decisions about your investments.
We're not giving you a thumbs up or a thumbs down. We're giving you the information you need to decide for yourself.
Exactly. Knowledge is power.
It is. And speaking of interesting information, do you remember how we mentioned that there was a connection between PACB and food safety?
Oh, yeah, that's right. So it turns out that the FDA, they're increasingly using whole genome sequencing, which is something that PACB specializes in to track foodborne pathogens.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. So it helps them pinpoint the source of outbreaks much more quickly and accurately, and ultimately that protects consumers from getting sick.
I never would have thought about that. That's amazing.
It's a great example of how this technology has far-reaching applications.
It really does. And it makes you think, what other unexpected uses are there for this kind of technology down the road?
Who knows? The future is full of surprises.
That's for sure. Well, this has been a really fascinating look at PACB. What do you think? Are you bullish, bearish, or somewhere in between? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe to the Stock Analytics AI YouTube channel for more deep dives like this one.
And just a reminder, everything we've talked about today is for educational purposes only. It's not financial advice. Always do your own research before making any investment decisions.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of PACB. Until next time, stay curious.